Commander Elena Reyes stretched in her backyard, enjoying the morning sunlight filtering through the maple trees. The weather report promised a typical Colorado summer day, a comfortable 78 degrees with a chance of afternoon thunderstorms. Perfect for gardening. She knelt beside her tomato plants, unaware that 8 pairs of eyes were observing her from orbit. "The specimen has emerged from its shelter," reported Santol, the Galactic Concordat's chief xenobiologist. His 3 hearts fluttered nervously as he adjusted the observatory sensors. Atmospheric analysis confirms oxygen levels of 21%. The Deathworlder appears to function normally in these toxic conditions. The observation team had been studying Earth for 3 standard cycles, debating whether to initiate contact with what their sensors classified as impossibly dangerous Deathworlders. Their mission commander, First Speaker Lorilla, hovered anxiously on gossamer wings. "Magnify observation field," she ordered. "I want to see how it tolerates the high-gravity environment." The screen zoomed in on Elena, who was now digging in the soil with bare hands. "By the 7 moons," gasped Lorilla. "It's directly touching microbe-infested particulates without protection. Are we certain this is their dominant species?" The ship's computer confirmed. Humans were indeed Earth's apex civilization, despite evolving on a planet with crushing gravity, wild temperature fluctuations, aggressive microorganisms, and atmospheric oxygen that would be considered a corrosive gas on most Concordat worlds. A solar flare chose that moment to wash across Earth's magnetosphere, temporarily disrupting the ship's cloaking technology. Elena paused, trowel in hand, and looked up. The morning sun glinted off something that definitely wasn't a commercial airliner or weather balloon. She squinted, then calmly raised her hand and waved. Chaos erupted aboard the observation vessel. "We've been detected," screeched the pilot, their skin flashing alarmed patterns of purple and yellow. "Initiating emergency protocols." "Wait," Lorilla commanded, even as her wings buzzed with stress. "The Concordat Charter requires peaceful contact once observed. Prepare landing protocols." Elena watched with growing curiosity as the silvery disk descended into her backyard, somehow managing to avoid crushing her prized rosebushes. The craft was roughly the size of a delivery van, its surface shimmering like liquid mercury. "This is unexpected," she muttered, reaching for her phone. As a commander in Earth's recently formed Explorer Corps, she had theoretical training for first contact scenarios, but nobody expected it would happen in suburban Colorado. Before she could call headquarters, a seam appeared in the ship's side. Helena squared her shoulders and took a deep breath. First contact. In her garden, while wearing yoga pants and her brother's old Air Force t-shirt, 4 figures emerged wearing what appeared to be full environmental hazard suits. The tallest barely reached Elena's shoulder. The lead figure's helmet was translucent enough to reveal a face that resembled a cross between a dragonfly and a lemur, with enormous multifaceted eyes that blinked rapidly. "Greetings, Earth Dweller," came a mechanical voice, presumably from a translator. "We apologize for our intrusion. Our observation parameters were compromised." Elena smiled her most diplomatic smile. "Welcome to Earth. I'm Commander Elena Reyes of the Earth Explorer Corps. Would you like some lemonade while we talk?" The aliens conferred hurriedly among themselves, their suits making soft whirring sounds as internal systems presumably analyzed the environment. Elena noticed they moved carefully, as if the simple act of standing in Earth's gravity required tremendous effort. "Lemon. Aid," the translator finally produced. "Our database indicates citrus fruit contains citric acid. You ingest acids voluntarily." Elena's confusion turned to amusement. "It's diluted and sweetened. Perfectly safe, I promise." The aliens collectively took a step back when her cat, Leica, sauntered out from under a porch chair and rubbed against Elena's leg. "You cohabitate with predators," one exclaimed, the translator struggling to convey the correct level of horror. Elena gently scratched Leica behind the ears. "This is just my cat. She's harmless. Mostly." The lead alien, who introduced herself as first speaker Lorela, seemed to be gathering her courage. "Commander Reyes, our data classifies your planet as Deathworld 9, extremely hostile to standard galactic life. Yet you thrive here. The Concordat wishes to understand how this is possible." Elena looked around at her garden. The summer sky, the distant mountains, a death world. She couldn't help but laugh. This is just home. 2 weeks after first contact, Elena stood in Earth's orbital docking bay with her small delegation. Dr. Marcus Chen triple-checked his equipment bag, while diplomat Aisha Okafor reviewed cultural briefing notes on her tablet. "Remember," Elena told them, "apparently we're terrifying space monsters. Try not to sneeze on anyone." Marcus grinned. "I packed antihistamines, though I'm curious what alien allergies might be like." The Concordat vessel that arrived to transport them resembled a gleaming silver Nautilus. Its interior featured padded surfaces and gravity that immediately felt off. "Is something wrong with your artificial gravity?" Aisha asked their escort, a willowy being named Zixtel, whose species communicated partly through color-changing skin patterns. "This is standard 0.7 G, comfortable for most Concordat species," Zixtel explained, skin flickering with concerned blue pulses. "We can increase it if necessary." "Please do," Marcus said, accidentally floating upward when he tried to sit. "This feels like trying to walk in a swimming pool." The journey to the Concordat central hub took 3 Earth days. Zixtel gradually became less skittish around the humans, though they still maintained what Elena began calling a terror radius of about 2 meters. "Your species evolved on a world with 47 apex predators," Zixtel explained one evening. "Our scans indicate your muscle density is 3 times galactic average, and your skeletal structure could withstand impacts that would shatter most sentient species." Elena laughed. "We're just built to handle Earth. Nothing special. You consider constant tectonic activity, extreme weather patterns, and deadly solar radiation nothing special." Zixtel's skin rippled with patterns that the translator interpreted as incredulous. Their arrival at the hub caused a sensation. The massive ring station housed representatives from over 200 worlds, none of which matched Earth's extreme conditions. Corridors cleared as they walked by. Some aliens pressed themselves against walls. Others peeked curiously from behind barriers. "Your quarters are this way." Zixtel guided them to a separate section of the station. "We've prepared special accommodations." Special meant reinforced like a bunker. The walls were triple-thickness polymer, the doors sealed with multiple redundancies, and warning signs in 17 languages decorated the entrance. "This is excessive," Aisha noted diplomatically. "Safety protocols for Class 9 Deathworlders," Zixtel explained. "Some species worry your bodies might emit toxic compounds." Marcus snorted. "Like what?" "Carbon dioxide." Zixtel's skin flashed alarmed orange. "Precisely. For the methane brothers of Rigel 6, carbon dioxide is immediately fatal." During the tour of medical facilities, Marcus accidentally sneezed. The resulting panic required 3 hours of decontamination procedures and a station-wide alert. Elena found herself apologizing to the station director, a crystalline entity that communicated through resonant vibrations. "We mean no disrespect," she explained, "but our biology isn't something we can control completely." Understanding, the director resonated sympathetically. "Adaptation time needed. Fascinating species, humans. Terrifying, but fascinating." The botanical garden became their favorite refuge. Filled with plants from dozens of worlds, it reminded them of Earth while providing new wonders. During one visit, Elena noticed a group of small, amphibious aliens fleeing in terror, leaving their picnic behind. "What happened?" she asked Zixtel, who was now their official handler. Zixtel pointed to Marcus's backpack. "A predator. Extremely dangerous." Elena looked closer and burst out laughing. A monarch butterfly had hitched a ride from the ship, now perched innocently on the bag. "That's just a butterfly. It eats nectar from flowers. Zixtel approached cautiously, multifaceted eyes widening. Truly, its wing patterns match warning coloration of 17 lethal species in our database. Later, in the station's gym, Aisha demonstrated push-ups to an increasingly disturbed audience. The aliens watched in horror as she deliberately stressed her muscles, explaining concepts of exercise and strength training. "You intentionally damage your tissue to make it stronger," asked a physician with tentacles for limbs. Repeatedly. "That's how we build endurance," Aisha explained. "Endurance for what?" asked another observer. "Life on Earth," Elena replied simply. That evening, as they relaxed in their quarters, Marcus discovered the environmental controls were set to mimic Earth's day-night cycle, specifically programmed for safe containment of dangerous Deathworld species. "We should feel insulted," he said, "but honestly, it's kind of amusing." Elena nodded, watching station residents hurry past their window, stealing fascinated glances at the terrifying humans. Tomorrow's the formal welcome dinner. 23 species, each with their own cuisine. "Think they'll faint when they see us use hot sauce?" Aisha wondered. "Probably," Elena smiled. Apparently capsaicin is classified as a neurotoxin. As they prepared for sleep, alerts chimed throughout the station announcing, "Caution, Deathworlders entering dormancy cycle. Maintain safety distances from human containment zone." Elena fell asleep wondering what these peaceful aliens would think if they ever saw Earth's truly dangerous aspects, not its gravity or weather, but its wars, its history, its capacity for both creation and destruction. Some things, perhaps, were better left undiscovered, at least for now. The grand reception hall gleamed with bioluminescent decorations that pulsed in gentle patterns. Representatives from 23 species mingled cautiously, a symphony of appendages, exoskeletons, and communication methods. The humans had been given a special table, separated by a subtle but unmistakable buffer zone. "They've quarantined us," Marcus muttered, adjusting his formal Explorer Corps uniform. Elena shrugged. "Can't blame them. Look how they're reacting to the appetizers. Their human food, carefully selected to be minimally alarming, sat mostly untouched. A brave tentacled diplomat had nearly fainted after tasting a plain cracker, declaring it explosively textured. First Speaker Lyrilla floated toward them on gossamer wings, accompanied by representatives from major Concordat worlds. "We begin cultural presentations shortly," she announced. "Each delegation will share holographic displays of their homeworlds. We are curious about Earth." The lights dimmed as the presentations began. The humans watched in fascination as images of alien worlds filled the hall. The methane plains of Rigel 6, where balloon-like creatures drifted above crystalline formations. The underwater cities of Aquarian, where pressure remained constant through carefully managed tidal systems. The floating archipelagos of Lyra, where mild breezes never exceeded 15 kilometers per hour. Every world shared common elements. Minimal tectonic activity, carefully balanced ecosystems, predictable weather, and gravity rarely exceeding 0.8 g paradise worlds. By human standards. "Notice anything?" Aisha whispered. Elena nodded. "No predators. No natural disasters. No environmental stress. Their worlds never tried to kill them," Marcus added. "They never needed to adapt to survive." When Earth's turn came, Elena stood. "Our world might seem harsh by your standards," she began diplomatically, "but to us, it's simply home." The holographic display activated, showing time-lapse footage of Earth's seasons changing, weather systems moving across continents, and tectonic plates shifting over millennia. Initial murmurs of appreciation quickly turned to gasps of horror as the presentation continued. Footage of thunderstorms rolling across the Great Plains elicited terrified whispers. Video of surfers riding 20-foot waves caused one delegate to require medical attention. When the presentation showed Mount Everest climbers battling sub-zero temperatures and thin air, an elderly representative from a low-gravity moon simply closed their sensory membranes and refused to watch. You climb that, voluntarily? Lurila asked, wings vibrating with stress. For recreation, Aisha confirmed. I've summited twice. The final images, wildlife documentaries showing lions hunting zebras, sharks feeding, and eagles snatching fish, nearly caused a diplomatic incident. 3 species immediately filed formal protests, claiming the humans were displaying glorification of violence. Those are just animals doing what comes naturally, Marcus tried to explain. Predation at that scale doesn't exist on our worlds, explained a shell-encased scientist. We engineered predatory instincts out of our ecosystems millennia ago. During the uncomfortable silence that followed, Zixtel approached the human table, the first alien to do so voluntarily. Fascinating presentation, they said, skin pulsing with scholarly interest rather than fear. May I join you? Elena welcomed them, relieved to find one alien not completely terrified. As they discussed Earth's biodiversity, Elena noticed something unusual. Zixtel, is your heartbeat normal? I can see pulsations at different rates. I have 5 hearts, they explained. Each beats at different rates to circulate specialized nutrients. How do you survive with just one? Zixtel asked, genuinely curious. Elena smiled. We make it count. The diplomatic tension eased somewhat as dinner progressed. The humans carefully avoided mentioning Earth's more extreme environments or dangerous wildlife. Instead, they focused on art, music, and cultural achievements. Then Marcus reached for the pepper. The innocent sneeze that followed triggered a cascade of panicked responses. 3 species evacuated the dining hall entirely. Decontamination fields activated automatically. Medical personnel rushed in with atmosphere purifiers. It's just pepper, Marcus protested as hazmat-suited attendants scanned him. Amid the chaos, station alarms began blaring, not for the sneeze, but for something else entirely. Attention all delegates, announced the station eye. Minor gravitational anomaly detected in Sector 7. Routine precautionary protocols engage. Most delegates ignored the announcement, still focused on the human contamination event. Only Zixtel noticed Elena's sudden alertness. You're concerned about the anomaly, they observed. On Earth, we don't dismiss anomalies as minor until we understand them, she explained. Unexpected things tend to bite you if ignored. Zixtel's skin pulsed thoughtfully. Perhaps Deathworld instincts have advantages. As emergency teams finally determined that human sneezes weren't lethal, the station lights flickered briefly. The AI voice returned, still calm but with subtle urgency. Gravitational anomaly increasing. Technical teams requested in stabilization control. Elena exchanged worried glances with her team. On Earth, gradually worsening situations rarely resolved themselves, and somehow she suspected the same might be true among the stars. The minor gravitational anomaly revealed itself 4 hours later as a rogue pulsar emission that sliced through the station's outer defensive shields like they were tissue paper. Elena was reviewing xenobiology reports in their quarters when the lights flickered, then died completely. Emergency illumination cast eerie blue shadows as the station's artificial gravity fluctuated. That's not good, she muttered, grabbing her emergency kit. Standard issue for Explorer Corps officers, even at diplomatic functions. The station AI's voice had lost its soothing quality. Critical systems failure in environmental control. Containment breach in coolant section 13G. All personnel evacuate central hub immediately. Elena found Marcus and Aisha already in the corridor, helping disoriented aliens navigate the suddenly hostile environment. Without the carefully calibrated gravity and atmosphere, many species struggle to function. Some crawled along walls, others huddled in respiratory masks. Status report, she asked a passing technician. The insectoid beam's translator glitched with static. Coolant system. Toxic release. Central hub contaminated. Council members trapped. Elena's team exchanged glances. The central hub housed the current emergency council meeting. Over 200 delegates from across the Concordat. What type of coolant? Marcus asked, his xenobiologist instincts kicking in. Cryogenic methane nitrogen compound. The technician chittered. Fatal to most species after 30 seconds of exposure. Station security forces rushed past, equipped with environmental suits that seemed painfully inadequate. Thin membranes clearly designed for brief emergency use rather than sustained toxic exposure. Their evolutionary protection against environmental toxins is minimal, Marcus observed. Their worlds never required those adaptations. Alina made a quick decision. We've got Earth-evolved filtration systems. Lungs, livers, kidneys designed to handle toxins. We can survive exposure long enough to reach the manual override. Zixtel appeared through the chaos, skin flashing distress patterns. Commander Reyes, you must evacuate with the others. The central hub is compromised. We're going in, Alina stated firmly. Your people aren't equipped for this kind of crisis. We are. Zixtel's multifaceted eyes widened. The toxicity levels are beyond safe parameters for any species. Safe parameters are relative, Aisha replied, tightening her bootlaces. On Earth, we train for hostile environments. The station's emergency coordinator, a six-limbed administrator, approached their group. When Alina explained their plan, the aliens' translation matrix struggled to convey appropriate shock. Impossible. The environmental systems require access through near-vacuum conditions and toxic atmospheres. Tuesday on Earth, Alina replied with a tight smile, borrowing a line from old action bids. We need schematics and access codes. As the coordinator reluctantly provided emergency authorization, alarms intensified. The AI voice reported, containment failure spreading to adjacent sections. Estimated time to critical life support failure, 17 minutes. Alina led her team toward the contaminated area. Station security tried to stop them, but quickly realized the humans were their only hope. At the final bulkhead, they prepared improvised protection from materials in Alina's kit. Basic activated carbon filters, Marcus explained to the astonished security team. Ancient technology, but effective for short-term toxin exposure. Remember, Alina told her team, we can handle about 4 minutes of exposure before suffering permanent damage. Move fast, breathe shallow. Zixtel, still following them despite obvious terror, asked, how can you calculate such risks so calmly? Earth teaches you to respect danger without fearing it, Aisha answered. Fear paralyzes, respect motivates. The bulkhead opened to reveal a nightmare landscape of ruptured pipes, sparking conduits, and swirling toxic vapor. Emergency lighting strobed through the fog, creating disorienting patterns. The humans moved forward without hesitation. They navigated the treacherous environment with skills honed on Earth, Alina using techniques from cave exploration to identify structural weaknesses, Marcus analyzing airflow patterns to find the safest route. Aisha maintaining their orientation through the confusing layout. Midway to the control room, they encountered a secondary crisis, a collapsed passage trapping a group of young aliens in a rapidly flooding chamber. The toxic liquid was rising steadily. Without hesitation, Alina secured a breathing filter and dove into the caustic fluid. The aliens' translator captured their horrified reactions. The Deathworlder is immersing itself in pure toxin. 60 seconds later, Alina emerged carrying 2 alien children, their chromatophores flashing distress patterns. She handed them to Marcus and dove back in. When she finally completed the rescue, her exposed skin showed chemical burns, but her focus remained absolute. Control room. 2 minutes of breathable air left. Move. As they continued their desperate journey, the watching aliens couldn't comprehend the humans' willingness to endure such conditions. When one security officer called their actions suicidal, Aisha's reply was calm despite her labored breathing. On Earth, this would just be Tuesday. The Environmental Control Center resembled a war zone. Sparking panels cast unpredictable shadows across twisted metal and leaking conduits. 3 alien technicians huddled behind a makeshift barrier, their respiratory systems clearly struggling with the contaminated air. Station systems failing. One managed through their translator. I calculates 97% probability of complete environmental collapse. Alina assessed the situation quickly. Show us the system schematics. A holographic display flickered to life, showing cascading failures spreading throughout the station like a virus. Marcus studied the patterns, his scientific training kicking in despite the caustic atmosphere burning his lungs. The coolant system's primary junction is completely ruptured, he noted, but there's a counterintuitive solution. The lead technician's translator struggled with the concept. Counterintuitive. Thinking opposite to what seems obvious, Aisha explained, wincing as her exposed skin developed an angry rash from chemical exposure. Marcus pointed to specific sections on the hologram. If we deliberately collapse these 4 junction points, we create a firebreak effect against the cascade failures. The technicians conferred rapidly, their color-shifting skin displaying patterns of shock. Physically impossible, concluded the lid tech. Those junctions require manual override from 4 separate locations simultaneously. Each override point requires strength beyond safety parameters and exposure to near-vacuum conditions. Elena smiled grimly. Deathworlders, remember, this is what we do. She divided their team. Elena to the primary coolant hub, Marcus to the electrical subsystems, Aisha to the navigational controls. Each would need to reach their destination through increasingly hostile environments, then coordinate their actions to the second. Our synchronization must be perfect, Marcus warned. Otherwise, we'll trigger a catastrophic decompression. As they prepared to separate, one of the technicians extended a trembling appendage toward Elena. The probability of survival is below measurable parameters, they said. Why would you attempt this? Elena checked her makeshift filtration mask. Because someone has to. They moved through the station like ghosts from a nightmare. Elena navigated superheated corridors that would kill most species instantly, her skin blistering but her pace never slowing. Marcus disabled safety protocols that required sophisticated equipment, improvising with tools from his field kit. Aisha used techniques taught by Earth's ancient sailors to navigate when electronic systems failed completely, tracking air currents and vibration patterns. In the central hub, the gathered delegates watched in stunned silence as emergency screens tracked the humans' progress through areas deemed absolutely unsurvivable. Zixtel explained to the assembled council. Their bodies evolved to process toxins, withstand radiation, and endure physical stress beyond our comprehension. Earth taught them this resilience. At the primary coolant junction, Elena encountered a critical problem. The manual override valve had partially melted, requiring direct physical intervention. While station cameras recorded, she gripped the fractured cooling pipe with her bare hands, ignoring the cryogenic fluid that immediately caused frostbite. Override position reached, she reported through gritted teeth, ready for synchronization. For 7 agonizing minutes, Elena held the fractured pipe closed with her rapidly numbing hands, while Marcus and Aisha completed the necessary preparations. The watching aliens witnessed something they had never encountered before, a sentient being willingly enduring what their medical systems classified as unsurvivable trauma to save others. Synchronizing in 3, 2, 1. Now, Marcus called. Their simultaneous actions sent shockwaves through the station's systems. For a terrifying moment, emergency lights failed completely. Then, gradually, primary systems began to stabilize. Containment restored, announced the AI, its voice returning to normal parameters. Critical cascade halted, beginning atmospheric purification. In the aftermath, Elena sat in the medical bay while alien physicians cautiously treated her chemical burns and frostbite. They moved with a mixture of scientific curiosity and something new, respect. The Concordat's most revered elder, a being that claimed to remember the founding of their alliance, approached Elena. Their translucent body glowed with soft bioluminescence as they gently touched Elena's bandaged hands. "We have no word for what you and your team have demonstrated today," they admitted. The closest translation would be beautiful terror. Elena smiled tiredly. On Earth, we just call it doing what needs to be done. Throughout the station, the attitude toward the humans had shifted dramatically. No longer were they viewed merely as dangerous curiosities from a hostile world. Now, whispers followed them. Deathworlders saved us all. As technicians began repairs, the station's chief administrator made an unprecedented announcement. All warning signs around the human quarters were to be immediately removed. The humans were no longer to be classified as containment risks, but as honored allies. Zixtel found Alina later, skin pulsing with patterns that the translator interpreted as profound admiration. You knew the risks. You calculated your own suffering, yet you proceeded anyway. Alina flexed her bandaged hands. That's the real legacy of Earth. Not just surviving hardship, but choosing to face it when necessary. The days following the crisis transformed the human status on the station. What began as scientific curiosity evolved into something approaching reverence. Alina found herself constantly observed by alien researchers, their instruments recording her every physiological response. I feel like a lab specimen, she complained to Marcus as they entered the station's newly established Earth Studies laboratory. The expansive chamber contained simulations of Earth environments that the aliens found particularly baffling, from desert heat to Arctic cold. Zixtel, now heading the research initiative, greeted them enthusiastically. Their skin displayed patterns of excitement that required no translation. Commander Reyes, Dr. Chen, we've made extraordinary discoveries about human biology. Holographic displays activated around them, showing cellular-level scans of human tissues alongside comparative alien physiology. The differences were striking. Human cells contained adaptive mechanisms that appeared almost excessive by galactic standards. Your endocrine system can prepare your entire body for danger in seconds, Zixtel explained. No other known species possesses this fight-or-flight response at such magnitude. Your bones constantly repair microfractures. Your digestive system neutralizes compounds toxic to most sentient species. Marcus examined the displays with professional interest. Earth's evolutionary pressures were relentless. Species either adapted or disappeared. A group of military officials observed from an adjacent chamber, their discussion not meant for human ears, but picked up by the station's automatic translation system. The simulations suggest even a small human force could potentially dominate larger armies through sheer adaptability. Alina pretended not to notice their concern. Instead, she focused on building genuine connections with various station residents. She taught a group of crystalline entities how to play poker, discovering they were terrible at bluffing since their structures literally became transparent when they attempted deception. As their status shifted from curiosities to respected allies, the humans found themselves invited to cultural exchanges previously closed to them. Alina learned musical traditions from gas-based entities that communicated through harmonic resonance. Aisha studied architectural principles from species that built living structures through biochemical processes. During a demonstration of human medical techniques, Aisha's casual mention of childbirth nearly caused a diplomatic incident. You mean to say, clarified a horrified xenobiologist, that humans gestate their young internally and then expel fully formed offspring through a process that causes extreme pain and physiological trauma? Yes, Aisha confirmed. Live birth, fairly standard for mammals on Earth. 3 researchers immediately filed research ethics complaints, convinced the humans were deliberately sharing fictional horror scenarios. In the station's recreation center, Alina attempted to introduce human dancing. The pounding rhythm and energetic movements simultaneously entranced and alarmed the observers. A delegation from a low-gravity moon watched in particular fascination. You subject your cardiovascular system to such strain voluntarily? Asked one observer. For pleasure. The physical exertion releases endorphins, Alina explained. Natural mood enhancers. You exercise to trigger biological stress responses. For enjoyment. The translator couldn't quite capture the mixture of horror and fascination in the alien's voice. The research expanded beyond physical capabilities. Psychological tests revealed that humans possessed unprecedented empathy alongside their physical capabilities, an evolutionary advantage for a social species facing constant environmental threats. Your kind developed cooperation as a survival strategy, Sixtel noted during one session. Fascinating adaptation. Most predator species tend toward solitary existence. We're not predators, Alina protested. Zixtel's skin patterns indicated respectful disagreement. Your visual orientation, problem-solving capabilities, and physical attributes match predator evolutionary patterns. Yet you channel these traits into protection rather than domination. The Concordat scientific community became divided over how to classify humans. Some argued they represented an evolutionary miracle, a predator species that developed cooperative social structures and empathy. Others warned that humans remained fundamentally dangerous despite their friendly demeanor. The military faction conducted their own simulations, modeling human capabilities against various threat scenarios. Their conclusions, shared only among senior officials, suggested that humans possessed uniquely valuable skills for crisis response and adaptation to unexpected threats. As debates continued about humanity's place in the galactic community, Alina and her team focused on cultural exchange. They shared Earth's art, literature, and philosophy, revealing that their harsh planet had produced not just physical resilience but profound beauty. During one evening gathering, a multi-limbed philosopher asked Alina, "Does your species fear death, having evolved on a world that constantly threatens it?" Alina considered the question carefully. "We don't fear death more than other species. We simply respect its inevitability while refusing to let that awareness limit how fully we live." The philosopher's translator paused before finding appropriate words. "Perhaps that is your greatest adaptation of all." As the humans prepared for sleep that night, station announcements no longer warned others to avoid the human containment zone. Instead, they simply noted, "Earth delegation entering rest cycle. Respect privacy protocols." It was a small change, but significant. They were no longer specimens to be feared. They were guests to be respected. The attack came without warning. Alina was reviewing proposed Earth Concordat trade agreements when emergency sirens blared throughout the station. The AI's voice had abandoned its usual calm. Multiple hull breaches detected. Unknown hostile entities boarding in sectors 7 through 12. All personnel implement emergency protocols immediately. Alina raced toward the command center, encountering chaos in the corridors. Station security forces, designed for maintaining peace among civilized species, appeared woefully unprepared for actual combat. The command center view screens showed the attackers, humanoid creatures with chitinous exoskeletons and multiple secondary limbs. They moved with disturbing coordination, as if directed by a single mind. "The Vex," whispered the station commander, a normally unflappable aquatic being whose skin now pulsed with alarm patterns. "We thought they were just frontier legends." "Who are they?" Alina demanded. "A species evolved on a high-radiation world with constant electrical storms," Sixtel explained, joining them with uncharacteristic urgency. "They developed hive mind coordination and electromagnetic weapons. They're supposed to be isolated in the galactic rim." The security feeds showed the Vex overwhelming the station's defenders with brutal efficiency. Their technology disrupted the Concordat's sophisticated coordination systems, leaving the peaceful species disoriented and vulnerable. "They consider themselves the ultimate survivors," the commander continued. "And the Concordat pathetically weak." Alina assessed the situation quickly. "Your people aren't prepared for this kind of assault. We need to organize a resistance." The commander's translator conveyed skepticism. "With what? 3 humans against an invasion force." "With what we know," Alina countered. "Earth's military history includes countless scenarios of asymmetric warfare. We need to coordinate your security forces using methods the Vex can't disrupt." Alina, Marcus, and Aisha quickly organized the station's defenders using primitive verbal commands and hand signals developed by Earth militaries long before electronic communication. The aliens struggled to adapt but followed the humans' lead as the Vex advanced through the station. "They're expecting you to retreat toward the evacuation points," Alina explained. "Instead, we'll use environments they consider impassable to outflank them." The first counterattack caught the Vex by surprise. Security forces emerged from maintenance ducts and waste processing channels, areas the Vex had dismissed as uninhabitable. The battle raged through multiple sectors, with the humans directing defensive efforts from improvised command posts. During a momentary lull, Alina encountered a Vex commander who had been separated from the main force. The creature studied her with compound eyes that reflected her image dozens of times. "You lead these soft creatures," the Vex stated, its translator rendering a voice like grinding metal. "Yet you are different. Your movements suggest combat experience." "We're humans," Alina replied, maintaining a defensive stance. "From Earth." The Vex's secondary limbs twitched in what might have been amusement. "Earth? Unknown. Another gentle world producing weak species, no doubt." Alina couldn't help but laugh. "Gentle. We have something called Australia." The confrontation ended abruptly when station security arrived, forcing the Vex commander to retreat. As the battle continued, the humans demonstrated tactical unpredictability that confused the hive-minded Vex. While most species evolved to avoid danger, humans evolved to assess, confront, and overcome it. Marcus created improvised explosives using kitchen chemicals, disrupting the Vex's electromagnetic coordination. Aisha implemented psychological warfare techniques, broadcasting conflicting signals that caused confusion among the hive-connected enemies. Alina engaged in direct combat when necessary, repeatedly sustaining injuries that would incapacitate most species yet continuing to fight. The watching Concordat species witnessed humanity's capacity for controlled violence with a mixture of awe and terror. One security officer's private log entry later became famous throughout the Alliance. "They don't stop. They bleed, they break. But they calculate and continue." Perhaps Deathworld's forged something we cannot fully comprehend. In a particularly desperate moment, Alina's team found themselves defending the station's life support hub against an elite Vex strike force. With standard weapons ineffective against the Vex's adaptive armor, Alina improvised using the environment itself, deliberately rupturing a coolant pipe to flash freeze a corridor of advancing enemies. "Impossible." The lead Vex communicated as its systems failed. "Your species should retreat from superior force. This is not logical." "Humans don't always follow logic," Alina replied, ignoring her frostbitten fingers. "We follow necessary paths, however difficult." The tide gradually turned. The Vex, encountering resistance they couldn't predict or counter, began withdrawing to their vessels. Their final transmission echoed through the station. "We will recalculate. This anomaly requires analysis." In the battle's aftermath, Alina sat in the medical bay, allowing alien physicians to treat her numerous injuries. Station residents brought offerings of gratitude, artwork, cultural artifacts, even naming ceremonies in her honor. "They're treating us like heroes," Marcus noted, his arm in a regenerative field for a shattered bone. "To them, we are," Aisha replied. "We showed them something they've never seen, fighting against overwhelming odds without hesitation." Zixtel visited them, skin displaying complex patterns that transcended simple translation. "The Concordat has existed for 12,000 cycles," they explained. "In that time, we eliminated predators, engineered away disease, and forgot something essential." "What's that?" Alina asked. "How to face inevitable hardship," Zixtel replied. "Your Earth never allowed you such forgetting." As station repairs began, the humans found themselves the center of intense debate. Some feared their capacity for violence, warning that humans might someday turn against the Concordat itself. Others argued that humanity represented an essential alliance, species that remembered what the Concordat had forgotten through millennia of engineered peace. For the first time, representatives from a dozen worlds requested permission to visit Earth, not as researchers studying a Deathworld, but as students hoping to understand resilience. The Concordet's Grand Council chamber had never hosted such a contentious debate. Representatives from 200 worlds argued passionately about humanity's place in the galactic community. Some feared humans as potential conquerors, citing their combat capabilities during the Vex attack. Others advocated for full alliance, arguing that Deathworld adaptations represented valuable diversity. Alina stood at the center of the chamber, acutely aware of the historical significance of this moment. Earth's future relationship with the galaxy hinged on her words. "Honorable representatives," she began, her voice carrying through the vast space. "I understand your concerns about humanity. Yes, we come from a world that seems harsh by your standards. Yes, we've developed capabilities that might appear threatening. But I ask you to look beyond those surface impressions." The chamber fell silent as Alina continued. "Earth's history includes both war and peace. We've used our strength for conquest, yes, but also for protection and creation. We've built civilizations, created art, explored scientific frontiers, and constantly sought to transcend our limitations." She gestured to the station around them. "During the recent crisis, humans didn't use our abilities to dominate but to preserve. That choice defines us more than our physical capabilities ever could." A skeptical delegate interrupted. "How can we trust that humans won't eventually turn against the Concordat? Your species evolved as predators with aggressive instincts." Alina nodded acknowledgement. "Valid concern. But predator doesn't mean destroyer. On Earth, predators maintain ecosystem balance, and humans have repeatedly demonstrated our capacity to channel our instincts toward protection rather than dominance." Zixtel approached the council podium, their skin displaying patterns of scholarly authority. The normally quiet xenobiologist requested permission to address the assembly. "An unprecedented action for their typically reserved species. My research into human biology and psychology reveals something remarkable," they explained. "Humans possess unprecedented empathy alongside their physical capabilities, an evolutionary advantage for a social species facing constant threats. Their harsh environment taught them not just survival but cooperation." Zixtel displayed research findings showing that humans released bonding hormones during collaborative tasks, experienced physical distress when witnessing others' suffering, and formed deep social connections that transcended genetic relationships. Earth's harshest environments, Zixtel concluded, taught humans not just to endure but to connect. Their greatest achievement isn't their resilience but their capacity to care for others despite experiencing constant struggle themselves. The debate continued for hours. Alina's team provided examples from Earth's history: disaster response teams risking their lives for strangers, medical advances driven by compassion, international cooperation arising from shared challenges. Finally, the Concordat's ancient leader, a being who claimed to remember the Alliance's founding, addressed the assembly. The Concordat began as a shelter against the galaxy's harshness, they said, their voice barely above a whisper yet heard by all. "We engineered away difficulty until we nearly engineered away purpose. Perhaps we need Earth's children to remind us what we've forgotten." The vote was neither unanimous nor without conditions, but the outcome was clear. Earth would be offered full membership in the Concordat, with a new classification, Crucible World 1, acknowledging that pressure creates both strength and beauty. As Alina's team prepared to return to Earth with news of the Alliance, they found themselves surrounded by volunteers for the first cultural exchange program. Dozens of aliens willing to visit the terrifying Deathworld, despite lingering fears. "You understand you'll experience one full Earth gravity, right?" Marcus warned a group of insectoid academics. "And varying temperatures and weather." Their translator conveyed determined acceptance. "We wish to understand the forge that created humans." On their final evening, Alina stood at a viewport watching distant stars. Zixtel joined her, their skin displaying calm friendship patterns that needed no translation. "Nervous about returning home?" Zixtel asked. Alina smiled. "More nervous about bringing guests. Earth will seem harsh to your people. Yet you'll protect us," Zixtel observed. That's what Deathworlders do, isn't it? Shield others from harshness they themselves endure daily. The journey to Earth took 9 days. The alien delegation prepared through simulations and conditioning exercises, though nothing could truly prepare them for reality. When their ship entered Earth orbit, several visitors required sedation upon viewing the swirling weather patterns and vast oceans. Elena stood beside Zixtel as the shuttle descended toward the Colorado landing facility. Through the viewport, storm clouds gathered over distant mountains, lightning flashing within the dark formations. A light rain began falling as the craft settled onto the landing pad. The delegation hesitated at the shuttle door. Despite weeks of preparation, the reality of Earth, its gravity, its atmospheric composition, its unpredictable weather, tested their courage. Zixtel was the first to step onto Earth's soil. Their limbs trembled with the effort of handling 1G gravity, their respiratory system working overtime to filter the oxygen-rich air. They looked up at clouds gathering for an afternoon thunderstorm, then back at Elena. "Your world is trying to kill me," Zixtel observed with nervous wonder. Elena smiled and handed them an umbrella as the first raindrops fell. "Don't worry. We won't let it." As the alien delegation took their first cautious steps on Earth, the perspective seemed to shift. The camera pulled back, showing the blue planet from space, no longer seen as a death world, but as the home of the most improbable and valuable allies the galaxy had ever known. Humans, the species that thrived where others could not even survive, and in that thriving had developed not just strength but compassion. The Concordat's official records were updated that day. Earth's classification changed permanently from Deathworld 9 to Crucible World 1, with a notation, "Home of Humanity, forged by adversity into guardians." And somewhere in the vast database, a linguistic footnote was added. The human phrase, "that's just adorable," was now classified as a potential diplomatic warning when uttered in response to perceived danger, a phrase indicating that what terrified others was, to humans, merely Tuesday.